An age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew he wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while Silk clung on the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise has been rekindled. Our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Welcome to a very rare Thursday live stream. I apologize to everyone for not being able to show up yesterday. Let me reduce my size here and see if I can put myself in a better position. Nope, and nope. Let's try this. Nope, too big. I'll put myself down the bottom. Everybody wants to look at Cardinal anyways. Sound Engraver is here. Look at that. Sound Engraver is here on a Thursday. Yes, I'm going to say hello to who is here in the chat. We got Comics, Cartoons and Comic Studio. Ryan is here. Final Fantasy is here. Tony is here. And Sound Engraver is here as well. Well, Sound Engraver, I'm kind of glad that you're here. I was going to talk a little bit Superman, and you and the professor are very big Superman fans, I do believe. Well, I thought I was going to talk about that if I get to it after a little bit. But yes, everyone, I apologize again for not being here on the Wednesday at my normal time. I was traveling for 3 days, and I just couldn't do a live stream. I had to say sorry to John, and I couldn't even get onto his channel either. It was his week to do Comic Book Team Up. So yeah, I'm traveling for a couple of days and just got home. Literally just walked through the door. I said, I'm going to plug in my computer and do a live stream. So I'm not prepared in any way, shape or form to do a live stream, but I'm doing a live stream anyways because everybody deserves to have a live stream once a week. So yeah, I was thinking it might be a little bit shorter of a live stream this week, or we might just talk a little bit comic covers. We might go back to looking at some old 80s comics. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll do something, that's for sure. Or just talk about a couple of things that are going on this week. And at the same time, I completely understand. I just slapped an old thumbnail on this this live stream so that we could get it going and have everybody here. So Tony says, have I seen Superman? No, I plan to see it this weekend. Again, traveling for a little while. So, excuse me, didn't get a chance to see it as of yet. But as I understand, some people hate it, some people love it. But the really funny thing about it is that I did my Superman video and I said, there's no way you're going to hear truth, justice, and the American way in this. You're just not going to hear it. And people told me afterwards that James Gunn has even said, no, he's not going to use that. It's to him, it's truth, justice, and what is it? Truth, justice, and something else. It's not the American way. But the funny thing is, now that the box offices are in, is that people in America have gone to see Superman at a fairly good clip, but the rest of the world does not want to see it. That's what it seems like from the box office numbers, which is really funny. Why? Because the whole point of it is that this movie just takes Superman and all the rest of the superheroes and throws them at you. You don't have any, as I understand it, any cool down time to get into these characters, this story, anything like that. They give you no setup. It just begins. It's kind of like one of my comics. They just begin, although usually I try to give you a backstory as we go. But in that, that's, I think, exactly why America is going to see it, not as much as a lot of other movies, to be sure, but America is going to see it, but the rest of the world is not. Why? Because Superman is a piece of Americana. That's why. Exactly. Proving my point. Since it's a piece of Americana, Americans are going to go see it because they understand Superman and the superhero genre and these superheroes to some extent, so you can jump right into it. The rest of the world does not. And because the rest of the world does not, and they can't jump right into it, it is too much Americana for them to be shoved in their face. So the funny thing is, yes, Tony says, James Gunn said it was Truth, Justice, and the Human Way. Where is it? Here it is. Truth, Justice, and the Human Way. Yeah. The whole point, my whole point is, no, they're not going to put in Truth, Justice, and the American Way. But the fact is that even though James Gunn doesn't want to call it the American Way, doesn't want to put the American Way in it, he has told this story in such an American way, it is not appealing to anybody in the entire rest of the world. Oh, that is just too funny. In my opinion, that is just too funny. Again, because he doesn't realize, being such an American, that the rest of the world isn't American. It is absurdly funny, if you ask me, that this man who will not put the American way in Superman's tagline has told this story in such an Americana way that only Americans can access it. What do you guys think about that? I just found it absurd. And it is such, I don't know, it's an irony. It's a very unique irony for this movie, if you ask me. Let's see if anybody else is showing up. Oh, Sound Engraver has got me a super chat. Thank you very much, Sound Engraver. It's the one late night I don't teach. Oh, very good. So, well, like I said, the only reason we're doing it on a Thursday instead of a Wednesday is because I got caught on the road and just literally got through the door. Let's see. Manny is here as well. How you doing, Manny? Let's see who else. Let's see. Tony is saying it's 90 minutes of Superman getting his ass whooped and crying. Yeah, that's what I said about the whole crying thing. I had mentioned that, I think, in my video. Maybe that was one of the points I actually took out. I'm not entirely sure. Sometimes I do actually edit my videos a little bit. But yeah, much too emotional Superman. That's a point I did put in there. Much too emotional. Again, have not seen it as of yet, but from what I hear about people talking about it, that's exactly what a lot of people are saying about it. Sound Engraver says, yes, thanks for using the term Americana. It is a specific feel. Exactly. It's Americana. He's telling it in such an Americana way, in the 90s way, which, well, say late 80s, early 90s kind of way. It's exactly the idea when comics were on top. When he's telling the story from the time when you had Justice League America, not Justice League of America, not Justice League Europe, it's Justice League America. And it's, what's Diodatos? I can't remember. Who's the writer for just the original Justice League America? But anyways, yeah, it's mid 80s, maybe early 80s. I can't remember when the first Justice League came out. I think it would probably be 82, 83. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, that was the time when comics, American comics, were on top. And he's telling that story as if American comics are on top. He's starting from a point where he's jumping right into the story, as I understand it, as I've seen from a lot of the clips and so many of the movie reviews that I've seen so far, which again, my plans are to go see it this weekend, if not this weekend, the next. But I'm sorry, Americana is not on top anymore. And the fact that he doesn't realize this is the absurdity of the entire thing. He won't use American way, and yet he's acting as if American hegemony over culture is still intact, as if it was 1983, which is just so ironic. Anyways, Serge is here, and he says Superman is supposed to be the cavalry. Well, I suppose. As I understand it, of course, a lot of people are saying that this is a James Gunn movie about Superman, so it's not actually about Superman. It's Guardians of the Superman. It's Guardians of the Galaxy, except Superman instead of Star-Lord, basically. So it's not a movie that is actually going to appeal to the mass audience for exactly Superman. It's more of a generic throw everything at the wall, see what sticks movie for superheroes to try to start off an entire new universe of superheroes, which I don't know if that's going to work. I really don't think it is. Tony says, RJ, have you read Siegel and Schuster's Ultra Humanate Superman arc? It's not worthy for introducing what is the first transgender supervillain. No, I don't think I have. Siegel and Schuster's Ultra Humanate Superman arc. I don't know. You'd have to give me a specific date that it came out and title, because I don't think I did. Off the top of my head, I can't say that I did. Ryan says, RJ, if I wrote Superman, I would make kryptonite an abundant resource so that Superman was potentially threatened by it in some form in every fight. Without that, he is never in danger. Okay. Well, that would be very contrary to the way I would write it. Again, as I said in my video, I would go back to the Jim Shooter way of it, and his way was exactly the opposite of that, was to stop making Superman have weaknesses and just tell a story about, again, the chivalry of Superman, and about him being a paragon of virtue, which is, again, the whole DC kind of arc, whereas Marvel is humans trying to be gods, where you have DC, it's gods trying to be human. That's basically what a lot of people say about the difference between the two. Sound Engraver says, I can't stomach any deviation of Superman's essence. I don't care how trivial. It's a snowball effect. Well, one of the fun things that I completely forgot about this deviation from the Superman mythos, it's not the traditional way to go about it, but the Superman origin, if you go back to after the Crises on Infinite Earths, which is the early 80s, when John Byrne actually recreated Superman and made him much less powerful than he was in the earlier iterations of Superman. Not since going back to his origin was he so nerfed, although he was still very powerful. John Byrne's Superman was not an quote-unquote immigrant at all. I forgot about this little fact about John Byrne's Superman, because the way that John Byrne wrote Superman, it was that the pod that Superman was placed in, the spaceship that he was placed in order to get to Earth, was actually where he gestated in. And so when the pod, the little, I don't know, spacecraft landed on Earth and opened up, that was the womb that he had come out of, because he had fully gestated at that time and then was born here on Earth in America. That's a John Byrneism for you, even though John Byrne is Canadian, which is really funny, because I always have these people saying, oh, Superman is an immigrant. Superman is an immigrant. Going, well, most of the time, but not all the time. Let's see. John is here. He has to go to bed. Yes, says, thank you for the invite, but I'm going to bed. Good night. Good night, John. You deserve to go to bed. It's been pretty hot where I was traveling, John. I went a little bit south, and it was hot for a couple of days. And I'm sure if you're still working in, last time I talked to you, John, you were working in the hospital, but it had no air conditioning on the new hospital. So yeah, you might be sweating bullets. Let's see. Tony says, Gunn just turned Superman into Star-Lord. Yeah, which is what a lot of people are saying. Chris is here. How you doing, Chris? He says, I had a jerky dog, so I'll use that. I was attacked online, so I'll use that. How much of me can I put in the movie? That would be James Gunn. There you go. That would not just be James Gunn, but that would be so many of the writers right now for comic books as well. It is exactly the problem with so much entertainment. Here's something that I ran across not too long ago, was you see a lot of these actors right now, and they don't act at all. All they do is play themselves in a movie. That's not really acting. They might be acting out lines, but if they're just playing themselves in a movie instead of actually playing a character, is that really acting? I'm not entirely sure it is. Like, think about Jack Black, okay? I never really truly liked Jack Black to begin with. I know a lot of people around me do. People who know me do. I never really liked him that much. But Jack Black basically plays Jack Black in a movie, especially I watch, I can't remember what the name of there's a duo who does movie reviews on YouTube. They basically watch movies and then you just watch them watching the movies. Anyways, it's a guy, I can't remember his name. It's Mr. and Mrs. Movies. Anyways, I don't know where they live. They live out in the country somewhere. And actually, I did contact him because he's a big Mr. Movies. I contacted him because he's a big Conan fan, and I know that from when they reviewed Conan. And I said, "Hey, you want a copy of Crom the Destroyer?" He said, "Oh yeah," which is great. Unfortunately, Crom, of course, is delayed, and somebody actually gave me a name. I'm going way off track here. Somebody actually gave me a name to give somebody a call or DM them in order to try to get the art finished on it. But I do have an artist working on those last pages. It's not that I don't have an artist to replace Jim because he just couldn't finish. It was the fact that my artist is working on it, but he's slower than we might like at this point. But doing 80 pages, you can't be rushing 80 pages to begin with. So I do have somebody working on it. It's just taking a little while to get the art done. Anyways, where was I going with it? Oh yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Movies. They did recently the Minecraft movie, which I didn't go see the Minecraft movie, nor do I have any inkling of going to see the Minecraft movie or even renting it or watching it. But they did a reaction to it on YouTube, and it has both Jack Black and what's his name? The guy who played Conan in the recent Conan movie and who played Aquaman. I don't know his name off the top of my head. What's his name? He was also in Stargate. Momoa? Is it Momoa? I think it is. Anyways, both of I don't know. Each of those guys, Jack Black especially, didn't actually play a character. He just played Jack Black. And kind of Jason Momoa kind of just played Jason Momoa too. I mean, there was a bit of a character there, but I didn't see much of a character. But that's the problem with a lot of entertainment right now. It's that, no, they're not actually being artistic. They're just taking who they are and then putting it onto a piece of art. And that just, I don't know, that is not, well, I won't say that's not art to me. I would say that's not conducive to actually making good art in some way. Because, I don't know, if we wanted to see you and talk to you, then we would just get you. If we want to actually have this separate world, then yeah. How's about you actually try acting for a while? How's about you actually try writing instead of, just copying and pasting your own life into this entire thing? And it's, again, maybe not so much with the actors, could be, I don't know. But is the fact that nobody can seem to look outside of their own perspective anymore. And if you can't see outside your own perspective, then how are you going to write something from a different perspective? How are you going to write a movie, write a comic book, write a novel, anything from different perspectives with different characters? How are you going to play a character with a different perspective from you? And again, the way that people get attacked for some of the things that they do movies for, now it's probably safer that you actually just play yourself. Again, don't know, but Chris, you have a good point, and that's where my mind went with it when you said that. Thank you very much for that comment. Tony says, plus they reduced Supergirl to a drunken party girl. Again, yes, I've heard that part. Again, I can't say anything about that because I haven't watched it yet. Tony also says, Byrne introduced too much modernity for my taste. Beautiful art, but way too progressive. Yeah, well, John Byrne is fairly progressive, but I always thought that was a funny thing, and I completely forgot about it. Let's see. Yes, Stan Graver says Momoa. Yes. Serge, let's see. Wilhelmus van Dijver. Thank you for coming. I think, Wilhelmus, you've been here before. I'm not entirely sure. If not, welcome for the first time. I think I remember your avatar. I'm so visual. I just remember people's avatars. It's the only way I can remember who they are. We just had a win with Zelda being cast as an actual woman instead of a dude in a dress. Really? I have not heard any news about that at all. Let's see. You might be pulling my leg, Wilhelmus. I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. Sarge is here. How you doing, Sarge? So yes, random live stream, to say the least. Random live stream. We're just talking about simple things that I ran across over the last week because I've been traveling and really haven't got to see too much here. And oh yes, I should let everybody know if anybody runs into this live stream later on and doesn't know anything about my channel, there are links in the description for the 2 books. Well, actually, for the sign up page for Fade to Blue, the other trailer that I played was for Crom the Destroyer, which was not up on Indiegogo. It's not up on Indiegogo anymore right at this point, but we will be selling it again. I just stopped the sales of it until we can finish actually fulfilling the first campaign, and then it will probably go back up on a different page so that we have the book done and it can be shipped out to people. Because it's so late, I'm just stopping orders right now. Well, Stripe kind of put a kibosh on it to begin with, not because of what's going on with it being late, but because of other reasons that have to do with Stripe. And I said, yeah, it's probably the best because we need to concentrate on just fulfilling this campaign and getting it out there. So anybody wants to take a look at those books, the links are in the description for a few of my books, and you can go to a few of those and take a look at the sign up page for Fade to Blue, which is the new book that will be coming out. And the sign up page, you can watch the trailer again there if you want to see the trailer again, see some more of the art, and actually leave your email address if you want, so you can be informed when the project goes live. Besides that, what else? Oh yes, the book is black and white with a little bit of blue thrown in. That's partly why we call it Fade to Blue. It's basically, we'll just say, well, it's a combination of Indiana Jones and film noir. How's that? Because film noir is supposed to have no supernatural elements in it at all, but Indiana Jones has supernatural elements. So we're using the film noir vibe, but more of a supernatural kind of feeling to the world. Indiana Jones kind of supernatural, maybe a little bit of John Constantine thrown in there, stuff like that. Let's see. We'll see if I have any more comments. No, we're good. And oh yes, and the links also in the description for John's book, which is the Heroic Tales. His second book, I think, is still up on Fund My Comic. Link is there for that as well. And also you can follow the links to my other projects. The project link for The Valiant Heroes, which is my second superhero Valiant book, is there as well and still open. And you can order both The Valiant Heroes and Thomas Valiant, my 2 superhero books from that. Anyways, just wanted to get that out of the way. Tony says, RJ, what are your thoughts on the latest Robert E. Howard comics from Titan? Again, I wish I had more thoughts on it, Tony. The Titan books, the new Titan books, I've been reading a lot of the older Titan books, but not the newer ones. I don't have a comic store right now around me that I can readily get comics at. The normal place that I would get comics and order comics from closed down because after everything was shut down, it, I think, just put him into a spiral as a comic book store, and he went out of business. So I don't have a place to get them right now, and I hate ordering things off the internet. So again, I should have bought some while I was traveling. I didn't have a chance. Usually what I do now is when I'm traveling, I stop by comic stores if I can and pick up things, but I don't have much of the new Titan Robert E. Howard comic books. They look really good. That's all I can say. Besides that, and how far they follow the story, I can only tell you what I know from other people's experience. And it's the fact that they seem to be starting in a way that is very much reminiscent of when the Conan stories began with Marvel Comics, in the fact that they're starting with the Robert E. Howard stuff, and then they're going to add onto it little by little. Again, don't know that for sure, but they look enough like good Robert E. Howard stories that I would say go check them out. And I know that from Titan, the stuff that they previously had published was great. So some of them were hit and miss, but at the very least, that's one of the things I was going to talk about at some point. One of the things I think that people should do in order to start a comic book company these days is follow the pattern of what comic books used to do. And the way that comic book companies used to get started was to do things like publish reprints until your name got established. And then after your name's been established, then start to introduce some of your own stuff. That's how the first, well, it wasn't Marvel at the time. I can't remember. It was Timely Books got it started. That's how a lot of other smaller and larger companies got started for selling comics. And it's the way to do it. And I think Titan has followed that pattern to some extent, reprinting some of the stuff from Europe and getting their name established with the Conan brand, and then moving on from that into other stuff, which is exactly what you need to do, in my opinion, if you're going to be a company and start selling comics. Let's see. Ryan says, RJ, what heroes would benefit most from reducing their strength and powers? I believe Hulk, Flash, and Superman should be scaled back. Oh yeah, Flash especially. Superman, I kind of like the John Byrne version of Superman, quite honestly. He was depowered enough so that he wasn't invulnerable, man. That was one of the points that John Byrne was trying to make with Superman. He was just too powerful, even if you go back to the just pre-crises stuff, or even the Earth 2, I think it was stuff with the JSA, he was a bit too powerful. And if you go back to the campy stuff from DC, he was basically, Superman had any power that you could think of in that book that he would never use again, because that's the way they wrote without continuity. So the way that John Byrne working under specifically the crises mentality, which was to start continuity for DC Comics, he had to put a continuity into his power set, and that continuity became one where he wasn't overpowered. That being said, let's move backwards to the Flash. You were saying Hulk, Flash, and Superman. Flash needs to be nerfed. Absolutely. I'd say, and nerfing him was done already. What they should, I've said this numerous times, Wally West should still be Flash. It still should be under what Mike Baron made him in the early 80s. That's when they nerfed Flash. Because again, going back into, we have Wally West Flash. He was nowhere near as powerful as Barry Allen, and so much so that it made him a much better character. I think that other people went other places with Flash besides Mike Baron, but I think Mike set the tone for it was because of the fact that he couldn't do things like vibrate through walls. He couldn't run as fast as going back in time. And he also had a very strict limitation of, basically, he had to eat a lot, like constantly, in order to actually power his body, which was a very interesting way of interpreting the character. And I think that they should have kept it that way. Introducing the entire Speed Force, that was just throwing everything out the window. And I don't like that at all. Hulk, on the other hand, I don't know if you can nerf Hulk. I think that you can put limitations on him without nerfing him at the same time, because the whole point of Hulk is the fact that the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. So it's kind of the power set of Hulk to begin with, which makes him unique. And I think that you can keep that without making him super invulnerable in a very specific way. And again, the very specific way is that he flies off in a rage. He doesn't have the mentality of Bruce Banner, all these kinds of things. So yes, you can reduce for Hulk, yes, you can reduce his usefulness as a hero, as a character, even into a state of wild beast, without reducing his strength and powers. So I would think that Hulk is much more a unique situation than the Flash or the Superman. Thank you for the question, Ryan, though. All right. Tony says, RJ, always wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on the reasons for Robert E. Howard's suicide? In my opinion, the reason why he killed himself was because, well, let's go back to to answer this question. It's a good question, Tony, by the way. And I'm answering questions today because we're just having a random live stream, and I need to give some more love to my chat because I've been ignoring you guys, I think, a little bit too much when I have my live streams lately. I feel like that anyways. I apologize for that. But Tony, if you look at Robert E. Howard's writing, I find that what he was trying to do was portray a picture of what he wanted to be, which is a man's man. Because I think a lot of what he was portraying on the page was lacking in his life. And yes, he was a big guy and he was a strong guy. And I think he boxed as well, or wrestled, one or the other. He did do a lot of stuff that would be considered a man's man back in that time and place even. But at the same time, I think that when you read his stuff, it kind of comes out on the page in a very artistic way, by the way. I'll give him that, to say the least. In a very artistic way, trying to portray a man's man that he wants to be, in his own life. And it's not just strength, but also it's, let's look at Conan just as his prime example of character. Very suave with women, even though he's rude and crude. And he's ultimately capable in certain ways, like the fact that he can travel all over the place and pick up languages left and right, all these kinds of things. And he's extremely strong. Not that he can't be defeated, but he's extremely strong. So he's a good writer in so much as we were just talking about, he can start writing from things that are not his perspective. And it's his lack of actual perspective, trying to figure out how to be a man's man. And he does that on the page. He's trying to set out a blueprint for himself. How do I become a man? And that is a big problem. It's a big question that gets asked today, and asked of people who don't have a really strong male role model as a father. And you see that everywhere today. And that's the thing. I think that Robert E. Howard was, to an extent, not able to realize those heroes and the heroic ideal that he put down on the page in his own life. And since he wasn't able to do that, he was very much, we'll say in a psychological way, enmeshed with his mother. I think the term would be. She might have been controlling. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know enough about his mother for me to make that statement, but enmeshment is basically a tying together of, in psychological terms, the mother using the child in order to have her needs met instead of the other way around, which is what a parent is supposed to do, is to meet the child's needs. And so it basically is a smothered child who doesn't know what their own identity is without the person in control, which is the mother or the father. Usually it's the mother. So I think that was probably what happened. Again, just as me interpolating from his works and what I know about his life, I think that's probably what actually happened between him and his mother. So much so that when his mother died, he couldn't go on living because there was nothing of him left. And that's what happens when you get into this psychological loop with a single parent a lot of the time, is the fact that when that parent goes, there's nothing of you left anymore. You don't know who you are. You don't know what your life is about. You don't know where your life is going. You don't know what use your life has in the slightest. And obviously, I would say since he committed suicide, he had psychological problems. I'm not going to glaze that one over at all. In my opinion, he killed himself. He had mental problems. And the mental problems, I think, again, if you're looking at his death, stem from his mother, because he killed himself right after his mother died. Like right after he walked out the door after she died, as far as I know, went into his car and pulled out a revolver. So yeah, I think the whole thing is tied up with that, and the fact that he just couldn't extract himself from that situation with his mother and become the hero that he wanted. And maybe, again, me projecting here, I don't know, maybe it was because he put down a little bit too much on the, let's say, masculine ideal of his heroic characters rather than the virtuous ideal of his heroic characters. Because if virtue is there, you have something to fall back on at the very least. Anyways, that would be my take on it, Tony. Really good question. Chris says Superman, the animated series, did great balance to depower Superman. Superman versus Metallo was a great second parter. I have never, well, yeah, I guess if we're talking about the old Superman animated series, not the old one, but I mean the one that came out in the 1990s, 2000s, early 2000s. I probably saw that at that point, but I don't remember that at all. But again, I think the Superman animated series was coming a lot out of the John Byrne aesthetic and the mentality of the power set at that time of post-crises. Sound Engraver says, I believe that method ties in with social media content. When I sell more sci-fi stories, published one, I'll post my analysis of seminal sci-fi works I love. Very good. Sound Engraver, if you want to put it in the comments, if you haven't already, let people know where they can find your sci-fi published story. Put it in the comments. Hopefully it'll go through as a comment. If not, put it, you can send it to me and I'll put it on maybe my Twitter or something like that, although I haven't been on Twitter for a little bit. Anyways, glad to hear that you've published a sci-fi story. Tell us about it. Tell us where we can find it. Let's see. Calliope is here. How you doing, Calliope? Calliope says, I missed half the live stream. Yeah, unfortunately, Calliope, this is one of my rare Thursday live streams at an hour after I usually go on, but there are reasons if you go back to the first. Tony says, RJ, do you think they'll ever release the full Epstein list? And if so, what do you think will be the consequence will be? Well, I really have no idea, but we'll say the conspiracy theory right now that I think is probably the best conspiracy theory that I've heard about this entire thing is that yes, yes, there is a list, and yes, they were planning to release it, and yes, people got to Donald Trump and basically said, you're going to upend the entire political establishment of the world if you do this. For good or bad, that's what you're going to do, and you can't do that. And so, yeah, I think the swamp has got him on that one. That's really what I think is going on. So no, I don't think they'll ever actually release it. Not the entire thing. Consequences will be that yes, the entire international order would fall. Quite honestly, if they release that entire list, to find out that basically most leaders and royalty and people of renowned, from celebrities, directors, again, politicians, the royal family have some connection to this man, and not a good connection, to say the least, would just, I don't know, the upheaval would be catastrophic. To me, I wouldn't care. I mean, the man's life, let's say Donald Trump's life has been threatened many a times now by would-be assassins. And again, who's to say that if the entire international order, including all of those people I had said, are going to be upended and thrown out of their positions of power because of this, to say that they wouldn't try again? There's my conspiracy theory for you right there. But that's all I think about it. And that's as much as I can come up with. Let's see. David says, I like how the Young Justice show did Wally West, having him have pockets in his costume for food because he may run out of energy. Yeah. Again, that would be a Mike Barronism right there, David. That's exactly as a Mike Barron invention for Wally West Flash. Ryan says, RJ, I believe that female hero movies and comics struggle because the hero archetype appeals mostly to men, and no real man wants to see beautiful women punched, tortured, beat up, bleeding, or killed. Good thing John's not here. Women get it in John's books, in the fact that they want to be heroes and they go out there and they try to be superheroes. The super villains don't pull their punches on them. So that's what happens in John's books. So you might not like those kinds of things, but I don't know about that, Ryan. It's an interesting take on it, but at the very least, I would say that the fact that most men, real men, don't want to see beautiful women punched, tortured, beat up, or bleeding or killed. I agree with that. But at the same time, there's a lot of social norms that have been changing over the years. So how many men you would consider real men, I don't know. But at the same time, that's why I try to write my characters, the female characters that I have for my books anyways. I try to write them in a way that they have limitations based upon the fact that they're female. And it's not something that I see a lot of in books and stories anymore. And I think it needs to come back. And I was just talking about this to someone while I was on my trip. We were talking about the Hunger Games, and he had never seen the Hunger Games. I think he read like the first book or something like that. And he asked me, he said, what did it end like? So I described to him the ending, and I said, you know, when I first watched the ending, I really didn't like it. I read the books before I watched the shows. But when I got to the ending, I really didn't like it because you had, spoiler alert, Katniss Everdeen basically go into a tailspin of psychological trauma wherein she became almost useless. And that is what happens to your hero at the end. And it seemed to me when I read it and then watched the movies, it seemed a bit counterproductive and a bit of a letdown. But the more and more that I sat with it and thought about it, the reality of that situation is most probably what would happen, quite honestly. And again, I could be talking out of my hat here, but I think that the way that men are raised and the way that women are raised, because it's different, and they're different because they're of biology. Although I wouldn't call men more psychologically, have more psychological fortitude than women. I just think they have a different kind of psychological fortitude than women, wherein they can compartmentalize things that would normally destroy a person and still keep going. Whereas women have a problem compartmentalizing them so much in that this would probably what would happen to Katniss at the end of this struggle. And again, I think that's a key to writing good women in stories that they're heroic in, whether they're superhero stories or not. Because again, like my stories, I have characters, which I talked about, and I've introduced, and there's a few key things to them that are very much in line with the fact that they're female. For example, Phantasm, who is kind of like a cross between my Shadowcat and Phantom Girl from Legion of Superheroes, and a couple of other things thrown in there as well. She has a very distinct habit of staying immaterial too much, which makes her disconnected to the world. Again, I haven't gone too deep into this with the stories that I published so far, but she stays immaterial too much. It gives her a disconnect to the world, and she stays immaterial too much because she's on a battlefield. And if, you know, she's a superhero and she gets knocked in the head with a rock, she's gone, right? So you want to stay protected all the time, stay immaterial, nobody can touch you. But again, that leads to personal problems and other problems where she can't connect with people. That's very much, I think, for my own writing anyways, a very, I don't know, realistic way of describing a female character who wants to be a superhero, still including them, but again, including them in a way that they can be in this superhero book and superhero story and still have relevance. Again, the other character I have is Disc. She's the most overpowered character in the entire series that I have written. But she has, again, psychological problems that for different reasons, because again, her psychological problems in the second book, which is The Valiant Heroes, is because her powers basically drove her a little bit insane, which you can see between the first book and the second book. But anyways, the point is, she also, if you've got the cards with the first book, which tells about the heroes, she wears a long coat, like an overcoat all the time. Why? Because it's lined with chainmail, basically. And again, she's on a battlefield and she can create portals, which makes her completely overpowered, but that doesn't make her invulnerable in any way. She gets hit in the head and she's done for. So, you know, a lot of these things, you can write a good female character and still include them as a superhero, and include them as a hero with a virtuous backstory, everything else, or a virtuous story arc. Doesn't matter. I think that you can include them and include them in very good ways, as long as you make male characters male and female characters female. And you don't try to make a amorphous character that's neither female or male. That's ridiculous. That's the problem right there. And I think that's the problem, Ryan, with the fact that movies and comic books struggle right now with putting females into their characters and making their characters male. They can't do that. They're trying to write generic human being that is also a superhero that, oh, by the way, happens to be male or female. No, I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. You start with male or female, and then you build those other things on top of that, and you can make spectacular stories and make good movies and comic books based upon these female heroes. Again, that's my little diatribe on that. Thank you very much for the question, though. Scrolling down. Sandra Garver says thank you. I assume because I asked her to put her link up here. She says her story is on Amazon. It's called Secondhand Sunset by my author's name, M.J. Mackenzie. Okay. It's kind of hard to find since I'm just starting out. It reads like it's straight out of 1950s sci-fi magazine. Very good. My Crom the Destroyer story, that is the print story, by the way, Sound Engraver, reads very much like a 1930s out of a sci-fi magazine sword and sorcery story. Very much so. So we're going hand in hand with that one, Sound Engraver. So anybody wants to get a look at Sound Engraver's sci-fi story, go over to Amazon, look up M.J. Mackenzie or the Secondhand Sunset, and you can find it there. Let's see. Michael is here. How you doing, Michael? Says, DC are crabs in the pot. One crab can escape, but multiple crabs cannot because they drag each other down. Well, I never heard of that analogy before, Michael, but it seems very interesting take on the entire thing. I would have to think about that for a little while, but given the track record of the DCEU, it seems most plausible. The best way that DC characters seem to operate within the movies is as single characters in a single movie. You try to put them in multiple characters in a movie, and it just falls apart. Well, I agree with that much. Tony says, RJ, why do you think pulp characters that are adapted for film never take off, unlike their comic book counterparts? Just because there's not a built-in audience, pretty much. That's it, Tony. I love The Shadow, and The Shadow should have done so much better after that movie came out in the early 90s. I think it was early 90s. I liked that movie. I was a Shadow fan at that point. It didn't follow a lot of Shadow lore for some people, but I think it was earlier Shadow lore. But the whole point was that these pulp characters don't have a continuous fan base from the pulp to this point in time, so nobody knows who the characters are, and there's just too much backstory that you try to unload on this audience with a pulp character, and that's the death of your movie, television show, comic book, whatever. Conan would be the one exception to that, just because of the fact that there has been pretty much continuously Conan material written since Robert E. Howard was around writing the Conan material. And that would either be within the books, whether or not they be El Sprague de Camp or Robert Jordan, or you go to the comic books with Marvel and then other iterations of it as well. So there's always been something for Conan. So he's the exception, again, because they've kept him alive through having continuous fan bases alive at the same time. Let's see. Scrolling down. Sarge says, female heroes aren't written believably. Exactly. That's what I was trying to get at. Exactly. Colin, how you doing? Is here in the comments. Tony says, RJ, how cooked do you think the UK is? And do you think they'll survive another generation? I quite honestly, I don't have a rosy idea of what is going to happen to Europe in the near future. It's going to look like the 1920s, 1930s pretty soon, if you ask me. The local population is going to rise up, and there's going to be basically civil wars throughout Europe for the next, 30 years. And it's because because the citizenry of a lot of the European countries, including the UK, the majority of them do not want the newcomers, we'll put it that way for YouTube, in their countries anymore. They want to get rid of them, but the governments are just too international. They're just too much under the thumb of the global internationalism that of the liberal world order, that they will never allow that to happen. So these people are going to have to overthrow their own governments one way or another, whether that be through, well, let's just say, without using the T word, clandestine military action, which is not sanctioned by the government, or to basically have, race wars, which is what the socialists and communists want to begin with, but they would rather it in America than UK, but they'll take what they can get. But again, it's going to be some version of a civil war, and it's going to basically start in one country, and I think just dominoes are going to fall. And right now, that country looks like it's going to be Spain. Not entirely sure, but again, Spain for a very good reason, just because of the history of Spain and the fact that they were already invaded and had to go through this entire thing hundreds of years ago. They'll do it again. And to me, once the dominoes start to fall, UK is going to be one of those countries. So yeah, they're cooked. But again, I'm not saying that there's a whole lot of countries that are going to escape that. Hopefully, the US is going to, because that's exactly what they want. This global world order, which is basically socialist and communist minded. That's what they want. They want a race war within America. I mean, that's exactly what the critical theorists wrote. They have treatises on. That's how we export the grand socialist revolution into America, is through race war. Anyway, Tony also says, RJ, what are your thoughts on Gail Simone's fridging? I have no idea what. I know somebody did a video about it. I think it was Wes over at Thinking Critical. I haven't watched it. And again, I've been on the road for the better part of a week, so I'm not entirely sure what that refers to right now. Sorry, Tony. Let's see. Scrolling down. Ryan says, RJ, I believe that Linda Carter as Wonder Woman was the best representation of how a female hero should be portrayed. Beautiful, feminine, empathetic, yet just and strong. Well, here's an interesting take on that, Ryan. You could be right. And I think you're right because of the fact that, again, you have the limitations of an actual woman, and then you have to work within those limitations of the actress in order to portray the hero on the screen. Problem is right now, with so much computer generated imagery and everything else within your superhero movies, half the time you're not actually getting the actual female character, the female actress playing the character in the movie in order for that femininity to come through on her natural motions and everything else. So interesting comment, Ryan. And I believe that it's quite possible that you're hitting the nail right on the head with the fact that it's Linda Carter. Again, because of the limitations. And that's one of the things I always say about comics. I love writing comics because of the limitations. I think limitations make your stories so much better, because you just, basically look at so many of these comics right now, even written by old school comic pros, or these movies, when you get someone who is too much stuck in their own head and they think that limitations do not apply to them, things just go down the toilet. So again, thank you, Ryan. But yeah, I agree. Linda Carter made that hero unique. Vilhelmus says, did you notice that they made Superman's origin in the new film basically equivalent to the origin of Omni-Man, except Superman chose to be good instead of evil? I don't know. It seemed weird to me to do that. Well, there is a version of Superman within the comics. Actually, it might have been John Burns, where you might think of it as an Omni-Man origin story, but it is an actual Superman origin story. I can't remember which version of Superman it is, but it is an actual Superman origin story. They did do it at least once. Not exactly this way, but it's close enough so that it is an actual Superman story. Scrolling down. Tony says, RJ, would you agree that the character of Kull represented Howard's psyche more than that of Conan's, Kull being dark, sullen, and fatalistic with an inability to deal with women? Yes and no. I think that here's the Tony. Let me put it this way: more yes than no. I think that since Cull was the initial character that Robert E. Howard wanted to run with, yes, it would be much more a representation of who he was and who he wanted to be. But the problem was that the audience liked Conan better. And so he had to run with Conan and with what the audience wanted. And so he was, to some extent, delving into a character that his audience wanted more than he wanted. It wasn't so much a representation of him as Cull was. It was a representation of what the audience wants, which is what a good writer does. If you're going to have, a continuous character that you build off of an audience to try to shape and mold and give the audience what they want. So yeah, Cull was more of a representation of who he was for Howard himself. And I think that he probably would have been in a much more stable mental condition and place throughout his life if he was able to still write Cull instead of writing Conan. But I know that's just my 2 cents on the entire thing. Let's see. Michael says, sounds like women in RJ's comics are glass cannons. To some extent, they're glass cannons. You do have overpowered females as well, but your overpowered females have to be someone with, well, I won't say overpowered. You do have females which try to act in a masculine way because they're invulnerable. Let's put it that way. If they don't have to worry about the fact that they're going to get taken off the battlefield by a stray piece of glass, then yeah, they're not glass cannons at all. Rage would be an example of that. She is more of a villain than a hero, but she's trying to be part of the Legion of Justice. So she wants to be a hero. She's really not. She's more of a portrayal of a villain, but she is overpowered enough so that she doesn't have to worry about appearing feminine or actually acting in a feminine way, which is why she's so butch and has the basic progressive female side of the head shaved haircut and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there is a balance, by the way, and the balance will play out more and more if we get to publish more and more. Let's see. Colin says, female superheroes are more fun to read when they fight the female villains. That way it doesn't feel so gross. Yeah. Well, Colin, I think that, again, you hit a point of what older comics tried to do and why you would have, again, female characters fighting female characters as for heroes and then villains. Again, it's no wonder that Wonder Woman's chief villain is usually Chitara. Again, it would be much more of something that would be palatable to the everyday individual, especially the everyday man who's going to read something like Wonder Woman. So yeah. Let's see. I think I'm falling behind a little bit on the chat. We're almost an hour in of this live stream that I said it was probably going to go short, but I'll see if I can answer all the questions before I leave. Excuse me. Sound Engraver says, yes, I love things written in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Sure, things are exaggerated, but that's part of the charm. I agree. Plus, I like the older style of writing as well. Sound Engraver. I very much love the Robert E. Howard style of writing. It's very much a Celtic version of a modern story. He has elements of a Celtic storytelling technique, but at the same time writes it in a modern version. And one of the things I always talk about, I think it's Across the Black River, is very much a Conan story told in a Celtic way, an old mythological Celtic way, because here's this story, and you have Robert E. Howard, who's used to writing Conan stories, and the story starts off as if it were a Conan story, and Conan is one of the characters, but as you go through this story, you realize more and more that Conan is a side character in this entire thing, and one of the other characters, which you believe to be a side character at the first, is actually the hero of the entire story. I think it's Across the Black River. So it's very much a Celtic way of telling a story, because they go off on sidetracks and things like that, and they give you little surprises like that. So I think that the 30s, 40s, and 50s, especially the 30s and 40s, were very much in tune with that mythological mindset that they could bring it into their stories. And I think they were, because of the revival in the late 1800s of mythology, which again comes about by your modernism and all that kind of stuff, which I won't go into tonight. But I really much enjoy 30s and 40s stories because I think they have a unique way of telling a story. Let's see. Scrolling down. Michael, sorry, he says Washington, D.C., not Detective. Or DC Comics. I was talking DC Comics. Sorry, Michael. George is here. How you doing, George? Yeah. And Michael says, Spanish Civil War Part 2, the Electric Boogaloo. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. George also says, well, Spain had a civil war in the 1930s, so another in under 100 years. It looks like that, yeah. And the funny thing is, you look at what's going on in Spain right now, and again, the international world order is hiding what is going on in Spain right now. There is massive riots, and the Spanish government is turning against the rioters who are Spanish, even though the people on the other side, which are not Spanish, are the ones that instigated the entire thing and are being more violent. So yeah, I could see what's going on easily leading to something going on in Spain. Calliope says Spain will have to go through a reconnoiter again. Hopefully it will not take 700 years this time. Yeah, agreed. Scrolling down. Michael says all of Spain having a blackout was pretty funny. Michael, someone had expressed it in this way exactly as I was thinking about the entire thing. This is the problem with our population decline and the decline in education that we have right now. It's a story element that I've thought about many times. It's the fact that we're getting to a point where there are more stupid people than smart people, and to a point where there's not enough smart people to actually run the infrastructure anymore. And since the smart people are not there to run and upgrade and just keep in existence the existing structure that we have, infrastructure that we have for things like power, I think you're going to see more and more of this kind of thing, just because, again, the stupidity of Western civilization has got out of control because you've allowed for things like emotional analysis of everything, so much so that you can't have even teaching in schools and universities objective reality anymore. Let's see. George also says, and the Spanish flu, which killed more people than the sea flu did, happened right before the Civil War too. History is repeating itself. Yeah. I think, I don't know if it was C.S. Lewis or if it was, what's his name? The guy who wrote the Father Brown series that said history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. And I think we're coming about that rhyming from about 100 years ago is where we are right now. Let's see. George also says, let's not forget, we all loved the Linda Carter transformation into Wonder Woman. Scrolling down. See if I can get to the end of the chat. Calliope says, RJ, why is romance between men and women verboten for the modern writer? Star-Lord and Gamora had to be separated, and Superman and Lois in this movie barely had any chemistry, in my opinion. Because sexual degeneracy has to be part of the liberal world order, has to be part of the quote-unquote progressivism that they push down your throat. And so showing, just again, look at television right now, and I dare you to find a stable family of a male and a female with children as, the center of the story. You're just not going to find it. And it's the destruction. It was one of the things I was thinking about talking about on my Saturday video, this coming Saturday, but it's the fact that I always thought about this when I was taking ancient history back in grade 11, and where they used to say, according to the old way of looking at things, that the Roman Empire fell because of the destruction of the Roman family. And I thought, that's a little bit simplistic. But as I grew and studied more, I am now of the opinion that, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And that's exactly how they're trying to destroy the Western civilization that we have built up for the last, I don't know how many hundreds of years right now, is the destruction of the family. There you go. Let's see. George says, that is true. Scarlet versus Baroness, Marvel Girl versus the White Queen, and ARC versus, I'm not entirely sure who the last two pair is. Let's see. Tony, moving on to Tony's It says, RJ, would you agree that most of John Byrne's writing is chock full of progressive political leanings? Maggie Sawyer being a lesbian, Superman, and Big Barda appearing in an adult film, etc. Yes, I would, but you couldn't tell that when you were in 1980 reading the stuff. If you go back and read it, you can tell. I agree. Most of the writers are chock full of progressivism, but they were hampered by good editors at the very least at the time. I like the fact that Chris Claremont was hampered by Jim Shooter, and wasn't able to put in all the things that he wanted to put in. So there is a balance. We'll put it that way. Scrolling down. I'm gonna just go through some of the comments because we're going into about an hour and 10 minutes, and I'm gonna have to take off because again, I just walked through the door after several days of traveling. Let's see. Sound Engraver says, I am proud of her work, which is her story, Secondhand Sunset. The one thing I plan on changing for future editions as part of a collection of short stories, I'm going for present tense, from present tense to past tense. Honestly, I found writing in present tense and first person was the thing that saved my writing, by the way. But if you can do it in past tense, you are probably a much better writer than I am, Sound Engraver. But Sound Engraver brings up a good point. Present tense and modern writing is a modern way of writing I need to avoid, but the story is good. All right, good point. Scrolling down. Colin says, there's always been more stupid than smart people. The issue is that smart people are not being chosen for maintaining infrastructure. I would agree to some extent, but again, I think there are much less smart people are much less in number. Again, I think that if you take, let's say, a 1920s high school test for anything and try to give it to your A students right now, they would not be able to pass it. Just straight up. Scrolling down. George says, didn't it scare you that there are even commercials of Google telling you what to eat and what to do for fun now on TV and YouTube? I have, I'll put this out here right now without trying to be too specific. I watch a lot of YouTube and other things. I get 0 ads. 0. You want to know why? I use Brave. And I have a bunch of extensions on Brave, which you can still use on Brave. Things like add this and that, we'll just say. And I get zero ads from any of those things. But at the same time, the ads, if you have the right combination of those extensions, the creator still gets paid as if you clicked on those ads. Just to let you know, works great for me. Scrolling down. Elijah says, RJ, would you say Zorro is the most popular pop culture? No, popular pulp cult. The most popular pulp character. No, I wouldn't. I'd say he's among probably the top 10, but I'd say Conan is probably the most popular pop culture pulp character because of his continuous movement throughout the culture. I would say he'd be number 1. But again, I'm a little bit biased. Let's see. Michael says, the Western Roman Empire fell because of the collapse of the family, the devaluation of currency, mass invasion of foreigners who refused to assimilate. Well, the thing is, the mass invasion of foreigners who refused to assimilate was because, again, just like we have right now, people trying to take in workers in order to have them replace the basic, we'll say, tax base, which is what they're trying to do, because they think people are cogs that can be replaced. They're trying to take in workers from the third world in order to replace the workers we have right now, in order for them to pay taxes, in order for the social systems to still be put into place. That's exactly what happened within the Roman Empire as well. And again, it has to do with the devaluation, with the collapse of the family, devaluation of the currency, and this mass invasion was because they didn't have the people from the Roman families anymore because of the destruction of the family to fill up the ranks the way that they did for the upper class of who's going to be controlling the army. So yeah, exact same thing. It played out in a different fashion to somewhat, but I can see it parallel to what we have right now, Michael, by the way. Sound Engraver says, best random live stream to date. Thank you. Michael says, we used to teach Greek and Latin in high school. Yeah, I had to wait until university in order to take Greek and Latin. I agree. And the thing was that everywhere, because there was a lot of old, like I lived in the country, right? And we would go through a lot of older places that were being torn down or just abandoned. You would find high school Latin, Greek books all over the place. And I have a collection of them. Let's see. Wilhelmus says, present tense first person point of view is my least favorite way to write or read. I find it is the only way that I can actually make sense. And that's my limitations as a writer, though. Tony says, RJ, would you consider Robert Heinlein, Starship Trooper, to be fantastic? I wouldn't say fantastic. I would say it's better than mid. How's that? It's better than middle of the pack. It's good science fiction, but like so much good science fiction, it's because the audience took it in a different direction than the writer actually wanted it to go in. Let me put it that way. And there are a lot of examples of this. I use, like, John Carpenter is the producer of some of my favorite movies in the world. But his characters, he intended them to be something completely different, to make fun of the heroic ideal in many ways. It's just that his audience didn't see it that way, didn't pick up on that slight fact, and so took it in the direction they wanted to go with it. And I think the same thing with Starship Troopers, which, by the way, is why we have writers being so heavy-handed these days, because they are thinking to themselves in the back of their minds, well, we tried it in the subtle way and it didn't work because X, Y, and Z, and agreed it didn't work because of too much subtlety, but that's why they have to be heavy-handed. So let's hope that our experience with that will drive both of them out. Let's see, scrolling down. Michael says, Count Dankula's channel is demonetized, but I still get ads watching his videos. Oh yeah, you'll still get ads no matter whether they're monetized or not. Let's see. Scrolling down. Question mark is here. And I'm giving question mark. His first comment is also the last comment of this live stream, because we're going an hour and 15 minutes. He says, howdy, what are your thoughts on the Asterix comics? Anything, that story that resonates with you? I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the Asterix comics. Why? Because when we were in school, it was part of the French program that I went through. They would only allow us to read Asterix comics in French, and it just drove me insane to try to read a comic and to translate the French at the same time. So don't ask me about Asterix. Just because of that fact, I've always had, I loved it. It looked like a great comic. That's something that I would enjoy if I didn't have to translate the stupid thing from French. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much, question mark, for your final comment. That we have been going for an hour and 15 minutes for this random live stream that I just pulled out of my hat and thought was going to take about 20 minutes. Thank you very much for everybody for showing up. And again, apologize for everybody for not having my usual Wednesday live stream at its regular time. I was on the road and just couldn't get to do a live stream at all, but I'm glad to see everybody here on a Thursday and to see a couple of faces that normally don't get to come, like Sound Engraver, on a Wednesday night. So thank you very much, everyone, for showing up. And I am probably gonna put up, let's see, let me put up an outro video from one of my other, let's see, what other video will I put up here? We already played Crom, we already played Fade to Blue for the first. I might play the exit video for Crom. Again, you can't get Crom right now. You can't order Crom right now. But at the same time, well, oh, wait a second. I got to take the comment off of there we go. And it will put the second video for Crom the Destroyer. You'll be able to get Crom the Destroyer once again. Once we have started shipping, I will start selling the book again. For everyone who has ordered it so far, I apologize profusely for how long it is taking, but we are working furiously as fast as we can. So here is the second trailer for Crom the Destroyer. Thank you once again for everyone for showing up for this Thursday live stream, and I will see you all later, either on my weekend video or next week when we are back here with John and Comic Book Team Up. All right, I'll see y'all later. Bye.
No matter how many wars you fight, no matter how much blood you shed, no matter how much rage you loose, no matter how many demons you face, no matter how many companions you lose, no matter if our kingdom falls, I know that you will return to me in honor.